All right, so get this. Brewing fuel on Mars.
Oh,
Yeah, not by shipping it millions of miles, but like actually making it there using just Martian air. You sent us some research on this, and let me tell you, it's pretty wild.
it really changes how we think about, well, space exploration in general, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We've always had this idea that we need to take everything with us, but what if we could use what's already there?
Yeah, exactly. And this research from scientists at the University of British Columbia, it was published just this month, lays out how they did it. And it's detailed in this article on scitechdaily.com. It's called Colonizing Mars, the simple device that could turn CO2 into vital fuel.
And that simple device is a thermoelectric generator, something that's been around for a while, but now being looked at in a whole new light.
Okay, yeah, I remember hearing about these back in school. They make electricity from temperature differences, right? Like if you had a hot cup of coffee and a cold glass of water, you could like theoretically generate a little bit of power.
Yeah, that's the basic idea. Of course, the generators we're talking about are a bit more sophisticated. There are actually different types, some that are better suited for high temperatures, others for smaller differences, but the principle is the same. Harnessing the flow of heat to create that electricity.
So how did these researchers use these thermoelectric generators to make fuel? Did they like plug a Mars rover into a hot rock?
Not quite. In the lab, they used a hot plate and an ice bath to create a very controlled temperature difference. But the key here is that they connected the generator to another device. It's called an electrolyzer.
An electrolyzer? That sounds familiar. Doesn't that split molecules?
Yes, you got it. The electrolyzer uses the electricity from the thermoelectric generator to split carbon dioxide, CO2, into its components, and one of which is carbon monoxide, CO.
And CEO is valuable because...
Well, we can use it to make all sorts of things. Fuels, plastics, even fertilizers. It's like having a mini chemical factory right there on Mars.
Hold on. So we're talking about going from thin Martian air to rocket fuel using just a couple devices and a temperature difference. It's like alchemy.
It is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And what makes this even more exciting is that the Martian atmosphere is almost entirely CO2. It's like Mars is practically begging us to turn its air into something useful.
That's incredible. But before we get carried away with dreams of Martian gas stations, I'm guessing this tech isn't just for astronauts, right?
Absolutely right. What's really fascinating is that this same technology could actually revolutionize things back here on Earth. Think about all the wasted heat we generate, from power plants to factories to our cars even.
We just let all that disappear into the atmosphere. Seems like we're missing a huge opportunity.
Yeah, exactly. With thermoelectric generators, we could capture that waste heat and turn it into something valuable. It's like getting free energy that we were just throwing away.
Okay, now that's what I call a game changer. We can make our industries more efficient and reduce their impact on the environment all at the same time.
Exactly. Imagine steel mills powering themselves with the heat from their own furnaces, or data centers using the heat from their servers to generate extra electricity. The possibilities are really quite mind-blowing.
This is all starting to sound less like science fiction and more like a really smart solution to some of our biggest problems.
It is. And the fact that it could also help us explore other planets, well, that's just icing on the cake.
Okay, so we've established this technology is pretty amazing, but let's get down to the nuts and bolts here. How would we actually use this on Mars? I mean, what would that actually look like?
Well, picture this. You have a Martian colony, probably with some kind of biodome to protect the inhabitants and keep things warm. Now, Mars might be cold, but it does get consistent sunshine during the day.
So you'd have this, like, warm, sunlit biodome, and then the backdrop of that, like, frigid Martian landscape, that's a temperature difference we could use, right?
Exactly. And we could strategically place thermoelectric generators around the colony, using the difference between that biodome's interior and the outside air to generate electricity.
And that electricity could power the electrolyzer, which would then churn out a steady supply of CO for making fuel. Essentially, the colony would be creating its own fuel from the very air around it.
Yes, you got it. It's a closed-loop system, a model of sustainability for a Martian settlement.
So we're talking about not just sending humans to Mars, but enabling them to live there independently, sustainably, and with a minimal environmental footprint. That's a whole new approach to space exploration.
Oh, it really is. It's not just about getting there anymore. It's about staying there and actually thriving.
This has been an incredible deep dive so far. We've gone from a seemingly simple concept to a potential revolution in space exploration and sustainable living right here on Earth. I'm already thinking about all the possibilities.
Me too. And what's even more exciting is that there are still challenges to overcome, which means there's even more room for innovation and discovery.
When I first heard about this, it honestly sounded a little too good to be true. Like, are we really going to crack the code on sustainable living with a device that just uses a temperature difference, both on Earth and on Mars?
I know what you mean. There's a, like, certain elegance to it, almost feels like cheating, But the science is there, and those potential applications are incredibly broad.
So we've talked about Mars and colonies and such, but I'm curious to, dig into those Earth-based applications a little bit further. You mentioned steel mills, data centers. Are those, the main areas we could see this tech making a difference?
Those are definitely prime examples, but think even bigger, like any industrial process that generates a lot of waste heat.
Okay.
Chemical plants, refineries, even glass manufacturing, they all produce tons of heat that's just vented right out into the atmosphere.
So instead of wasting all that energy, we could capture it and make electricity, fuels, or even other chemicals, turning a liability into an asset.
Exactly. Yeah. And it goes beyond heavy industry, too. Think about places like hospitals or university campuses with large centralized heating systems. They could use these generators to recover some of that heat and lower their energy consumption.
It's like this technology could be woven into the fabric of our infrastructure, quietly making everything more efficient and sustainable.
Yeah, it's a vision of a future where we're not just using energy more wisely, but we're actually thinking about it as a resource that could be recycled and reused.
And it all stems from this idea of harnessing temperature differences. I'm starting to see why you call it elegant, like a key that unlocks a whole new way of thinking about energy.
Yeah. It reminds me of how solar panels were like this futuristic technology a few decades ago, and now you see them everywhere. The Thermoelectric generator could easily follow that same trajectory.
Yeah, I'm really starting to see the potential here. But before we get too carried away and call this like a silver bullet, let's talk about the challenges. What are the challenges to actually implementing this on a large scale?
That's a great question, and that's really where things get interesting from, like an engineering perspective. Scaling up from a lab demonstration to a system that can operate reliably in the real world.
Okay.
Whether that's a steel mill or the surface of Mars. Well, that presents a whole new set of hurdles.
So what are we talking about? What are the big ones?
Well, for starters, durability. These generators need to be able to withstand, the elements, heat, cold, moisture, even corrosive chemicals. And on Mars, you've got the added challenge of dust storms. They can scour surfaces and clog up any kind of delicate machinery.
Right. I've seen pictures of those Martian dust storms. They look like something right out of a movie. Not exactly a friendly environment for sensitive equipment.
No, not at all. So engineers are really going to need to come up with some creative solutions here. Robust materials, clever designs, maybe even self-cleaning mechanisms. And then there's the question of efficiency. While thermoelectric generators are pretty good at converting heat into electricity, there's always losses involved.
So how do we squeeze every last bit of energy out of those temperature differences? I mean, is that even possible?
It's a constant pursuit. Researchers are always working on new materials and designs to try to improve that efficiency. And we are seeing progress. The efficiency of these generators has been steadily increasing over the past few years.
That's good. But even if we solve the durability issues, the efficiency issues, aren't there still some logistical hurdles? We're talking about deploying this on a planetary scale. It's not exactly like putting a solar panel on your roof.
Absolutely. We need to think about things like manufacturing, transportation, installation, maintenance. And on Mars, all of those things become exponentially more difficult.
Right. So we're talking about not just the technology itself, but the entire infrastructure needed to support it. That's a massive undertaking.
It is, but it's also incredibly exciting. It's pushing the boundaries of, what we're capable of, both in terms of our technology and our ability to collaborate and solve complex problems.
It feels like this one discovery has opened up a Pandora's box of possibilities, and we're just starting to explore them.
Exactly. That's what makes this so fascinating. We're at the cusp of something truly revolutionary, and it's going to take a lot of brilliant minds working together to actually bring it to fruition.
Speaking of those brilliant minds, what are the next steps for the researchers developing this technology? What are they focused on now?
Well, now that they've proven the concept in the lab, the next big hurdle is field testing. Seeing how these generators perform in real-world conditions, both here on Earth and eventually on Mars.
So are we talking about pilot projects at power plants and factories?
Exactly. They need to gather data on how these generators hold up under stress, how efficiently they convert heat, and how they integrate with existing systems, and of course, make adjustments and refinements along the way.
It's like taking a prototype from the drawing board to the test track. It's where the rubber meets the road, or I guess in this case, where the heat meets the generator.
You got it. And that data from those field tests will be crucial for informing the next stage of development, which is scaling up production.
So once they have a working prototype that can stand up to real-world conditions, the next step is figuring out how to mass produce these things.
Precisely. They'll need to find ways to manufacture the generators efficiently and cost-effectively, and they'll need to develop a whole supply chain for all the materials and components involved.
It's a huge undertaking, but it's also incredibly exciting. We're talking about taking a technology that could revolutionize energy production and actually making it a reality.
Yeah, it's a prime example of how scientific innovation doesn't happen in a vacuum. It takes collaboration, investment, and a willingness to take risks.
And speaking of risks, let's shift gears for a minute and talk about the Martian side of this equation. We've talked about how this technology could work in theory, but what are the practical challenges of actually deploying this on Mars?
Well, the Martian environment is just notoriously harsh. We've already talked about the dust storms, but there's also the extreme cold, the thin atmosphere, the radiation.
So everything has to be designed to not only withstand those conditions, but it also has to be lightweight and compact enough to transport to Mars in the first place. That's a tall order.
It is. But engineers are already working on solutions. They're developing new materials that are both durable and lightweight. And they're designing systems that can be assembled and maintained remotely.
So it's not just about building a better thermoelectric generator. It's about creating an entire ecosystem of technologies that can support human life on Mars.
Exactly. It's a systems-level challenge that requires us to think holistically about how we approach space exploration.
This is all incredibly fascinating, but I'm curious about the human side of this equation. If we're talking about sending humans to Mars and having them live there long term, wouldn't they need to be, trained to operate and maintain this technology?
That's a great point. We can't just send astronauts to Mars and expect them to figure it all out on their own. They'll need specialized training, not just in how to use the technology, but how to troubleshoot problems, how to make repairs if something goes wrong.
So we're talking about creating a whole new curriculum for Martian colonists, like Martian Engineering 101.
Exactly. And it wouldn't just be about the technical aspects. They'd also need to learn about the Martian environment, the challenges of living in a closed-loop system, the importance of resource management.
It's almost like we're creating a new breed of explorer. Part engineer, part scientist, part survivalist.
Yeah, it's a fascinating challenge. And it's one that requires us to think really creatively about how we prepare humans for life beyond Earth.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. We've covered so much ground from, the science behind thermoelectric generators to their potential impact on Earth, to their role in enabling human exploration of Mars. I'm feeling incredibly inspired, but also a little overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it all.
I know what you mean. It's a lot to take in. But I think it's important to remember that this is a journey, not a destination. And a journey that's going to take time, effort, and a lot of collaboration.
It's like we're laying the groundwork for a future that we can barely even imagine yet. And who knows what other amazing discoveries and innovations will emerge along the way.
That's the beauty of scientific exploration. It's a constant process of discovery and reinvention. And I, for one, can't wait to see what the future holds.
Me too. This deep dive has been a real mind expander. But before we get too carried away with visions of the future, let's bring things back down to Earth, so to speak.
Right. We need to talk about those practical challenges of making all of this actually happen.
Exactly. And that's where things get really interesting, because we're not just talking about science and engineering anymore. We're talking about politics, economics, the very future of our species. So we're talking about a future where humans could actually not only travel to Mars, but actually build a self-sustaining society there using, resources they create on site. That's a pretty big jump from where we are now.
It is a monumental shift in thinking. But it's important to remember this vision of a Martian colony powered by these generators and fueled by the Martian atmosphere is still very much in its early stages.
Right. We've talked about the engineering challenges, the need for, robust and efficient generators, the complexities of scaling up production, the logistical hurdles of deploying this tech on another planet. It's a mountain of obstacles.
It's definitely a multifaceted challenge.
Yeah.
But I think it's helpful to break it down into pieces.
Yeah.
If we can solve those individual pieces, then the larger picture will start to come into focus.
Okay, so let's tackle one piece at a time. What would you say is the most pressing challenge right now? What's the bottleneck that's preventing this technology from taking off?
I'd say it's a combination of factors. We need further advancements in material science to create generators that are both highly efficient and capable of withstanding you know, the harsh conditions on Mars.
Right, we can't exactly send a repair crew if a generator breaks down on Mars. So these things need to be built to last.
Exactly. And not just last, but thrive. They need to be able to operate reliably for years, potentially even decades, with minimal maintenance.
So we're talking about not just materials that can handle extreme temperatures, dust storms, but also materials that are resistant to wear and tear, corrosion, maybe even radiation.
Precisely. It's a tall order, but material science is constantly evolving. We're seeing incredible breakthroughs in nanomaterials, composites, even self-healing materials. I'm confident we'll find solutions that'll meet those demands of that Martian environment.
Okay, that's encouraging. But even with the perfect materials, there's still that question of energy efficiency. The more efficient the generators, the less waste heat we produce and the more resources we can conserve.
Absolutely. Efficiency is key, especially on Mars, where every watt of energy counts. Researchers they're exploring various approaches to improve that efficiency, including using new thermoelectric materials, optimizing generator design, even incorporating heat recovery systems.
Sounds like a lot of room for innovation in this field.
There is. And it's not just about squeezing out a few extra percentage points of efficiency. We're talking about potentially doubling or even tripling the efficiency of current thermoelectric generators.
Yeah.
That could be a game changer for both Earth and Mars.
So more efficient generators mean less waste, more resources, more sustainable future, both here and on Mars. It's a win-win.
It is. And as the technology matures, becomes more cost-effective, we could see a ripple effect across various industries. Imagine a future where waste heat is no longer wasted, but seen as a valuable resource.
Yeah, like closing the loop on our energy systems, turning what was once a byproduct into a valuable input, like a vision of a truly circular economy.
Exactly, and it's a vision that's becoming more and more attainable as we continue to push those boundaries of what's possible with thermoelectric technology.
Okay, so we talked about the technical challenges, the materials, the efficiency. Now let's zoom out a bit. Talk about the bigger picture. What are the implications of this technology for the future of space exploration in general?
Well, I think it has the potential to completely transform how we approach space exploration. If we can create fuel on other planets using those in situ resources, it opens up a whole new realm of possibilities.
It means we're no longer limited by how much fuel we can carry with us. We could travel farther, explore for longer, and potentially even establish those permanent settlements on other worlds.
It's like the difference between being a tourist and becoming a resident. Instead of just visiting Mars, we could actually live there.
Yeah, and not just live there, but actually thrive. We could build a society that's not just sustainable, but potentially even regenerative. That's a pretty incredible thought.
It is, and it's not just about Mars. This technology could be applied to other celestial bodies as well, like the moon or even asteroids. Imagine mining asteroids for resources and then using thermoelectric generators to power the mining operations and create fuel for further exploration.
It's like a domino effect. Each breakthrough just opens up new possibilities, leading to even greater advancements. It's a pretty exciting time to be alive.
Absolutely. We're witnessing this convergence of science, technology, and human ingenuity that's pushing us toward a future we could only, dream of before.
And the story about turning Martian air into fuel is just one example of that convergence. It's a reminder that innovation often comes from these unexpected places, and the solutions to our biggest challenges might be right under our noses, or in this case, in the thin Martian atmosphere.
Well said. And it underscores the importance of investing in research and development, in fostering collaboration between different disciplines, and nurturing that curiosity and creativity that drives human progress.
Because who knows what other groundbreaking discoveries are waiting to be made? What other seemingly impossible feats will we accomplish in the years to come?
That's the beauty of it, isn't it? The future is full of potential, and it's up to us to shape it with our ingenuity, our determination, and our unwavering belief in the power of human innovation.
I think that's a perfect note to end on. This deep dive has been a real eye-opener. I'm walking away feeling incredibly inspired and optimistic about the future. Thanks for joining us on this journey.
It was my pleasure. And remember, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and never stop believing in the power of human ingenuity to solve even the most daunting challenges.
Until next time, keep looking up and keep diving deep.